Everyone thought she was the holiest woman in church until one night the truth exploded across the city. What she did in the dark will leave you speechless, and the ending will melt your heart. In a bright African city filled with markets, buses, music, and church bells, there lived a woman named Grace. She was married to Pastor Emmanuel, a kind man who prayed for everyone. To the church members, Grace looked like the perfect example of holiness. She spoke softly. She smiled kindly. She prayed with women who were sad and sang beautifully during worship. Children loved her gentle laugh. And people always said, "Sister Grace is such a good woman." But Grace carried a secret she never shared. Before she married the pastor, she had once lived a different kind of life at night, a life where she met men for money. She was a prostitute, a hookup girl. When she married Emmanuel, she hid that, passed away. She didn't want her husband, that she was a prostitute before she married him. She wanted to keep it all secret. She wanted respect. She wanted a new beginning. So she acted holy. And slowly everyone believed she had always been that way. Only her heart remembered the truth. Time passed, and sometimes the memories whispered to her. She remembered the money she once made so easily as a prostitute. She remembered how quickly her purse filled, and one day she made a sad choice. She decided to return to her old nightlife, but this time in secret. During the day, she led worship in church. At night, she disappeared under neon lights for hookup, using a false name so nobody would ever know. Every day, Grace played her part so well that nobody suspected anything. She prayed loudly in church. She hugged crying members. She cooked for visitors. Emmanuel trusted her fully and often thanked God for blessing him with such a loving wife. He never imagined she was hiding another life from him. He believed every word she spoke. But when darkness fell, Grace changed. She would tell Emmanuel she was visiting a sick member or going for night prayer. He believed her completely. Then she would go far into the city, where colorful lights shone and people did not know her real name. There, she became someone else. She earned money and returned home quietly before morning. At first, she told herself it would only be for a short time. But money has a way of blinding the heart. Soon, the lie grew bigger. Her heart became heavy and she felt like she was walking around carrying a stone inside her chest. She smiled on the outside, but inside she knew she was not being true. And yet, she continued, because sometimes wrong things can feel easy at first until truth begins to wake up and walk toward us. The church kept growing. More people came every Sunday. They loved Emmanuel's preaching, and they loved Grace even more. Women wanted to be like her. Young girls copied her calm way of speaking. The elders trusted her completely. They even allowed her to teach other women about holiness. Grace spoke so well that no one ever imagined she was hiding such a big secret. But secrets do not sleep forever. They wait, they grow, they become shadows that follow a person wherever they go. Sometimes Grace sat alone in her room after church, looking at herself in the mirror. She wondered who she really was, the gentle church woman or the hidden night woman. Still, she kept quiet. She feared losing respect. She feared losing her husband. She feared being judged. So she chose the lie again and again, even though the truth was knocking softly on her heart. And somewhere in the city, unseen hands were beginning to gather the pieces of her secret. Because truth always finds a way. One night, someone who had seen Grace in the city began to talk. First, it was only a whisper. Then the whisper became a conversation. Soon it reached someone who knew the pastor. That person sent a short message to Emmanuel's phone. It said only, "Your wife is not who you think she is." Pastor Emmanuel stared at the message, confused and afraid. His heart beat fast. He wanted to throw the phone away and forget the words. But deep inside, something began to trouble him. He prayed quietly, asking God for wisdom. He did not accuse Grace immediately. He decided to watch, to listen, and to wait. Grace had no idea that truth was now standing outside her door. She continued her double life, believing darkness would always cover her. But darkness cannot hide someone forever. One night, when she went out again, flashing blue lights filled the street. Police officers came to stop the wrong things happening there. The police came to arrest all the prostitutes in that location. Unluckily, Grace, the pastor's wife, was among the prostitutes that were arrested. People ran in every direction. Grace was caught in the middle of it. Police officers gathered everyone, including Grace. She tried to give them her false name, but they checked deeper. Soon, they discovered who she really was, the pastor's wife. Cameras flashed. People recorded videos. By morning, the story was everywhere. Phones buzzed. Radio spoke her name. The whole city was talking. When Emmanuel heard the news, his heart broke like glass. He sat down and cried quietly. He remembered all the trust. He remembered the love. He remembered the prayers. Now he felt like the ground beneath him had disappeared. The church members were shocked. Some cried, some judged, some prayed, but nobody was unchanged. Grace sat in the police station with tears running down her face. All the lies, all the secrets, all the pretending had finally fallen apart. She realized that truth, no matter how long it takes, will always rise like the sun. And that was only the beginning of the storm to come. Pastor Emmanuel went to the police station with shaky steps. His eyes were full of pain, but his heart was still soft. When he saw Grace, sitting quietly with her head bent down, his chest hurt like a wound. This was the woman he loved. This was the woman he trusted. Now he had to face the truth he never imagined would be real. He did not shout. He did not insult her. Instead, tears rolled down slowly from his eyes. Sometimes tears speak louder than words. Grace could not look at him. She felt ashamed. The mask she had worn for so long had fallen off. Now she had nothing to hide behind. She whispered, "I'm sorry," but the words sounded so small compared to the hurt she had caused. Emmanuel prayed in his heart, asking God to give him strength to stand in the middle of such a painful storm. He could feel the eyes of the world on him, but his biggest pain was inside. He'd left the station that day knowing life would never be the same again. But he also knew that anger would not heal anything. Only truth and time could. Grace was released later, but she did not walk out proudly. She walked like someone who finally saw how deep the hole was that she had dug for herself. She went home quietly. Every step felt heavy. Her heart felt even heavier. For the first time, she sat and faced her own reflection. Not the holy wife image, not the smiling church lady, but the real Grace who had made wrong choices. She thought about the people she had misled. She thought about the young girls who admired her. She thought about the trust her husband had given her. All of it felt like broken glass inside her heart. She cried, not because she hated the world, but because she finally understood how much pain she had caused. She knew she could not change the past, but she also knew she had to face the consequences bravely. Hiding was over. Pretending was over. Truth had arrived, and truth was not living again. On Sunday morning, the church was quiet, like a field after a heavy storm. People came, but their faces carried questions and sadness. When Emmanuel walked to the front, everyone could see he had cried. His voice was calm, but full of emotion. He did not speak badly about Grace. He did not pretend nothing had happened. He simply said, "The truth hurts, but the truth is still better than lies." Some people wept openly. Others bowed their heads. Emmanuel asked the church to pray, not only for him, but for Grace too. He reminded them that everyone can fall. The important part is what happens next. Do we keep falling, or do we stand up and change? The service ended quietly. People walked home slowly. In many homes that afternoon, families sat together talking about truth, trust, and forgiveness. Grace's story had become a mirror for everyone. It reminded them that Nobody is perfect, and that the hearts must stay honest. Grace now lived in a world where everywhere she walked, it felt like eyes followed her. Some people looked at her with pity, others looked with anger. Some spoke softly, others spoke loudly. Shame wrapped itself around her like a heavy cloth she could not remove. But even in that pain, something new began inside her. Real repentance. She finally stopped pretending. She told Emmanuel everything, from the beginning to the end. She did not hide any piece of the truth anymore. Emmanuel listened quietly. His heart was still hurting, but he could see she was truly sorry. That did not erase the consequences, but it opened the door a little for healing to someday begin. Grace started praying. Not fancy prayers, not showy prayers, but simple ones. God, change me. Help me be true. And slowly, the stone in her chest began to feel lighter. Not gone, but lighter. Because real healing begins when truth finally enters the heart. Life did not suddenly become easy. It was still hard. Some church members left. Some stayed and prayed. Some forgave slowly. Some struggled. Emmanuel also had to heal one day at a time. He spoke gently but honestly with Grace. They agreed no more lies, ever again. Grace knew she had to rebuild trust from the ground up. She helped quietly at home. She stopped trying to impress anyone. She focused only on living honestly. And even though the road ahead was long and full of lessons, she was finally walking in the right direction, the direction of truth. The story was far from over. But something important had changed. For the first time in a very long time, Grace was no longer hiding. Grace began to learn how to live one honest day at a time. Before, her life had been full of secrets. Now each day, she woke up and said a small prayer. Lord, help me walk in light today. It was not always easy. Some mornings she felt embarrassed to even step outside, but slowly she learned to breathe again. She noticed that silence felt different now. Before, silence was heavy because it hid secrets. Now, silence was peaceful because she had nothing left to hide. She cooked, cleaned, read, and prayed. She wrote her thoughts in a small notebook, promising herself she would never again build her life on lies. Emmanuel also needed time. He spoke kindly, but his heart was still sore. Grace understood. Healing is slow. It is like planting a seed. You do not see the tree immediately, but if you care for it, it will grow. And little by little, peace began to return, quietly and gently. News in the city did not disappear quickly. People still whispered in markets, in buses, and even after church, some repeated the story again and again. Others had already moved on. But Grace learned something important. You cannot control what people say, but you can control how you live. Instead of hiding, she walked with calm steps. Some people looked at her strangely. Some avoided her. But a few smiled kindly, and those smiles felt like warm sunshine after rain. She realized there were still good hearts around her. People who believed in forgiveness and second chances. At home, Emmanuel encouraged the church to pray, not gossip. He reminded them that if God counted every mistake forever, none of us would stand. His words helped some people soften their hearts. And though the city still talked, Grace's heart slowly became stronger. She stopped listening to every whisper and started listening more to God's quiet voice inside. Grace decided she did not want to waste her pain. If she had fallen, then she wanted her story to help others stand. She began visiting a small center that helped women who were struggling with life. She did not go there as a teacher who knew everything. She went there as someone who had learned through tears. She told them gently, hiding only makes the heart heavier. Truth may hurt at first, but it sets you free. The women listened. Some cried. Some began to hope again. Grace saw that even broken stories can shine light for others. At home, she worked to rebuild trust with Emmanuel. She spoke openly now. If she was worried, she said so. If she was sad, she did not hide it. Emmanuel also shared his feelings. Their words became like small bridges connecting their hearts again, brick by brick. And every day, Grace thanked God for another chance to live honestly. One evening, the sky turned orange and pink as the sun went down. Emmanuel sat quietly, thinking about everything they had faced. He remembered the tears, the shock, and the long nights of prayer. But he also remembered the changes he had seen in Grace: real, gentle, humble change. He realized that forgiveness is not a one-time event. Sometimes you must choose it again and again, like watering a plant so it does not dry up. So Emmanuel prayed, Lord, help me, forgive fully, help me love wisely, help me heal. When he spoke with Grace that night, he was honest. He said, I am still healing, but I choose to walk this road with you. Grace cried softly, grateful for a love that refused to hate. Forgiveness did not erase the past, but it opened the door to a better future. Grace once thought strength meant looking perfect. Now she learned that true strength means telling the truth, saying sorry, and changing your ways. She was no longer the proud woman who wore a mask. She was a humble woman learning to stand again. She helped at home. She helped at church, not in front of everyone at first, but quietly. She prayed sincerely. Her words were simple now, but real. Emmanuel began to smile again sometimes. They even laughed together on some evenings. Those small moments felt like precious blessings. The church also learned. They understood that judging too quickly can wound hearts. They learned to pray more and gossip less. Grace's story became a reminder that nobody is beyond falling, and nobody is beyond rising again. And slowly, hope started to shine brighter than in shame. One day, an old rumor rose again, like dust in a dry wind. Someone who loved gossip decided to bring up Grace's past once more. Messages began moving from phone to phone. Some people repeated the story as if it were new. Others added lies to make it sound worse. Grace saw the messages and felt a small pain in her chest again. For a moment, fear tried to return. She worried that everything she had rebuilt would fall apart. But then she remembered something important. This time she had nothing to hide. She was living in truth now. So instead of running or crying in secret, she prayed, took a deep breath, and continued with her day. Emmanuel also saw the rumors. He did not panic. He simply reminded himself that God had already brought them through the strongest storm. This was only a small wind, and winds eventually pass. He stood beside Grace, showing the world that forgiveness was stronger than gossip. And soon, the noise faded again, because truth stood firm. The church members also grew wiser through everything that happened. They learned that leaders are human too. They can make mistakes. They can fall. They can cry. They also need help and prayers. So instead of judging quickly, the church began to care more kindly for one another. New teachings were added about honesty, accountability, and seeking help early. People slowly became more open. Some couples came forward with their struggles. Some youths shared their temptations. Instead of hiding problems, people began to talk and pray together. Grace watched this change with a soft heart. She realized that although her journey had been painful, God had used it to help many others. Emmanuel's sermons also became deeper and full of compassion. He preached not from a place of perfection, but from a heart that had walked through fire and survived. The church was no longer just a building. It was becoming a true family. Now, Grace did not rush to stand in front of the church like before. Instead, she served quietly. She swept floors. She helped children read. She encouraged women who were sad. She shared her story gently with those who were ready to listen. Not to make herself look important, but to remind them that truth matters. Over time, people began to see her differently, not as a lady with a secret past, but as a woman who had been broken and healed, a woman who now walked in honesty, a woman who cared. Her life became a message. It is never too late to change. Grace also found peace inside herself. She forgave herself at last. She understood that shame keeps people trapped, but truth opens the door to freedom. And now she walked freely, step by step, with a calm heart. She knew she would never return to the darkness again. Emmanuel still had quiet days when old memories tried to return. But now, instead of letting sadness stay, he replaced it with gratitude. He thanked God for carrying them through the storm. He thanked God for healing his heart. And he thanked God that his wife was now truly living in the light. Their home was peaceful again. Not perfect, but peaceful. They prayed together. They laughed together. They planned the future carefully, with honesty guiding every step. Emmanuel also helped other husbands and wives who were struggling. His story gave them courage. He realized something powerful. Love becomes stronger when it is tested and survives. Not fake love, not blind love, but wise, forgiving, patient to love. And that quiet joy filled his heart like soft sunshine. Years later, people still remembered Grace, not because of the scandal, but because of the change. They remembered how she fell. They remembered how she rose. They remembered how truth, forgiveness, and patience rebuilt what lies had broken. Children in Sunday school were taught a simple lesson from her life. Do not hide your mistakes. Do not live a double life. Truth may hurt for a while, but lies hurt forever. Grace and Emmanuel continued their journey side by side. They were not perfect, but they were honest. And honesty brought peace. So the story of Sister Grace became a modern African folk tale, not about shame, but about truth, consequence, forgiveness, and new beginnings. Because every heart, no matter how lost, can find its way back to the light. If you love this story and want more powerful African tales like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload.